Okay, hello everyone. Today is June 15, and this is the Cluster API Officer meeting. Before starting, quick note about the meeting etiquette. So you have to use the raise hand feature in Zoom. It is under action, and I will do my best to involve everyone in the discussion. If you have some topic that you want to talk about, feel free to add to the agenda, which is this document. Let me put in chat the link to the document. In order to get the edit access to the document, you have to be subscribed to the SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing list. The last point is that this is a meeting abide to the CNCF code of conduct, so be kind with each other. So let's get started with today's agenda. First of all, let's welcome a new attendee. Is there some new attendee that want to speak? Feel free to raise the hand. I pause for a second. Okay, since there are no new attendees, if someone joined, feel free to introduce yourself later in the meeting as well. So let's move to open proposal readout. I haven't seen update on proposal this week. So let's do this way for today. Is there someone that wants to give an update on the open proposals? Maybe Jack, given that we are addressing comments on the add-on proposal.
Looks like Jack's out this week, actually. I was out last week, but
okay.
Yeah, just I guess quick reminder, if you haven't seen the demo we gave of the prototype, I can drop a link in the meeting notes later.
Oh yes, and this is a nice idea, and please add the link also below the proposal on top of the document. Yeah, let me say from what I'm concerned, this week I've seen only some comment on the some work on the cluster API add-on orchestration proposal. Basically, we are moving from the first draft of the document to something that better summarize what is being worked in the prototype. But yeah, still work in progress.
Yeah, and if you're confused about the proposal, I think the demo should help clarify some things about what the direction we intend to go.
Thank you, Jonathan. So since there are no comments for the proposal, so we can move to today's discussion topic. Since please everyone adds your name to the attending list, so we keep track of who participated to the meeting. So this is the first topic, Matthew.
Yeah, so I put a couple of things on there, both requests for ideas and input. The first one is, well, I've explained it there. We have a user who, for whom the default failure domain spreading behavior of CAPI on the control plane is actively problematic. And I suspect this is relatively common in OpenStack deployments. So basically, we're looking for a way to disable it. We do not want CAPI to distribute control plane nodes across failure domains. We just want to leave that to the OpenStack scheduler. And we can do that. The way we can do that, or the best way we currently have of doing that, is basically adding something to the OpenStack cluster spec to say disable control plane failure domains, and then we just won't populate any. Yeah, and we can do that, and that'll work. My question is there a better way of doing that? Are there any downsides of doing that? Are there any other clouds who might not want the explicit failure domain spreading behavior of CAPI? Because it's an API change, I'm looking for input before going with the most obvious thing, which is to do it locally. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Thank you. Before asking for answer, so let me just add a little bit of context. So in cluster API, we have failure domain, which are defined on the cluster object. If these failure domains are populated by the infrastructure provider, then KCP try to spread the control plane machine in those failure domains. So the first question that comes to my mind, so basically what we are saying is that in most of your deployment today in cluster API provider for OpenStack today, you are okay with this behavior, but some customer, or in some case, you don't want this behavior. And basically you want a way to stop populating the failure domain. That's the question.
Well, I suspect that most clouds won't care because it's not a feature that's widely used in on-prem clouds, at least. You frequently find clouds only have a single failure domain anyway. So the feature's kind of silently doing nothing. The problem is when the cloud does implement failure domains, there are other resources, machine resources, which can also be dependent on failure domain. So, for example, flavor, different flavors may be valid only in some availability zones because they reference resources which are only available, which are only in some availability zones. So then it becomes kind of a landmine for users. They then have to make sure that they match up. They explicitly request only certain availability zones, and they use the right flavors for the right availability zones and what have you. Or we can just not do availability zones and just specify the other thing and let OpenStack do its thing. But yes, the availability zones are returned by our provider, and our current best thought is to simply not return them.
Well, I can give an opinion, but my opinion. So from a cluster API point of view, let me say, point number one, I'm aware that we have a very simple support for failure domains. I'm also aware that in KCP, the current behavior is to use all of them in machine deployment. Instead, we explicitly specify which failure domain we want for each machine deployment. So it's also kind of inconsistent. However, I'm personally open both to consider an improvement to KCP, which could require API changes and some discussion, but I really would like to have a feedback about how much this use case can be generalized outside of OpenStack, which is a valuable point. So if they don't want to speak now, I kindly invite people for the other provider to comment on the issue, which is linked in the document, and it is 1252, but in the OpenStack repository.
Yes, please. I would very much appreciate that. And like I say, it's not as if we can't do this. We can do this. I just I would like to do it cleanly in a way that isn't going to create that is going to create the minimum amount of API-ness in Capo, and it might, if it spawns another discussion about the failure domain behavior of KCP, then that is also interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate this is a good ask, and this is an opportunity for the providers to be consistent one on each other. So +1 for me to getting this discussion moving on. But yeah, we need other folks to chime in. So I invite again folks to look at it.
Thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and this isn't an immediate ask, is we have an OpenShift customer, so this is a Red Hat customer, who wants to deploy their control plane across separate L2 domains. Their control plane nodes are going to be connected to different physical networks. So we're not currently looking to implement this in CAPI. However, I suspect that this specific customer ask would be interesting to CAPI users, specifically Capo users. I'm wondering if we've ever given any thoughts to how we would model something like this, where there is a configuration difference between control plane nodes.
Anyone wants to comment on this? Yeah, also in this case, so my first reaction is that in cluster API, if you look at core cluster API, we don't have really a notion of network. And a network are infrastructure provider details in the current API model. And so given these caveats, if you use a thing like KCP to manage your control plane, KCP basically take a template and duplicate it. So it makes it difficult to have a different network for each machine under the same KCP, managed by the same KCP object. So there is an alternative that is to manage the control plane without KCP, but I would say currently the use case is not supported. And yeah, I don't have a ready answer on how we can have KCP basically to juggle between two different machine templates. Could be an interesting use case, again, if we reach a critical mass to work on it.
Is there anybody else who is interested in this? Who it's kind of related to the data center concept of spine leaf networks as well. So it's not directly a requirement of spine leaf. However, if if you're looking to do that kind of separation of network fabric. I mean, it's a reasonably logical ask. I wonder if anybody else has similar requirements. But this might be more of an on-prem thing, so maybe VMware. I don't know.
Personally, I'm not aware, but I'm not really working much on the provider side. Yeah, maybe folks working on provider can comment on this. Is there an issue for this one? I don't see it linked.
No, there isn't. I'm currently at the stage of this where I don't really know where to go with it. So I was hoping to find somebody else. So somebody was saying, "Oh, somebody's already done this," or there was this other thing. Go and look at that, or you should start by writing a proposal or something like that. So that's really the level I'm at with this.
Okay, so yeah, let's hope that someone chime in. If you create an issue, just explaining the problem or the idea, and you link it in the document, people have a place where to work on.
Okay, sure.
Just before moving on, I saw a comment in the chat from Vince about the previous point, failure domain, which is kind of interesting. So in Cluster PI, when you create failure domain, you have a flag to set to specify which failure domain is relevant for the control plane. So if you want, you can use basically this flag to specify failure domain, but not having a KCP to spread on them.
Yeah, we're aware of that one, but that's kind of, I think the user who reported it, Matt, he commented on that, that it's essentially it's a frequent source of error because the user has to manually ensure that that they're matching up the right AZs with the right flavors. And if they get it wrong, then it fails. And whereas what they're actually trying to achieve, the behavior that they're actually trying to achieve is that there is no failure domain spreading. So yes, that is another way we could do it.
Okay.
But again, we were looking for a slightly easier user experience.
Okay, yeah, my best suggestion is to try to rally people on the issue. Maybe you can ask in the CAP-V channel or in Metal 3 channel to see if other folks are interested and point them to the issue. Okay, moving on. So I have the next point on agenda. So it is an update on the 1.2 release. TLDR is that we are planning to cut the first alpha or beta tag probably Monday. And the most important thing is that as soon as the tag is out, we really need feedback from provider, mostly on the change that we made on cluster class for server-side apply. Giving a little bit more detail on this. So some detail about the release planning. So we plan to cut the tag Monday, immediately after create a release branch, start adding all the new end-to-end tests, etc., and work stabilizing the release branch, doing selective cherry picking. So we cherry pick only only small changes, fix the documentation, stuff like that. So we cool down basically the influx of PR in the release branch. The goal is to cut the 1.2 release in 3 weeks. This is usually what we do, but this really depends from the provider feedback. So again, it is really important that providers help us to validate the new release. Next, what is in the release? So it is another huge cluster API release. The speed of this project is really amazing. We have more than 600 commits. Yeah, we have a merge commit, but this says a lot of what this community generates. And yeah, kudos to everyone for working on this release. The biggest change in this release are runtime SDK, so extensibility model with lifecycle hooks and topology mutation hooks. These changes are almost ready, or we are lacking the last 2 or 3 PR that we plan to get merged this week, included also end-to-end test. The only exception with regard to the proposal is that we are not going to have the before the late cluster hook, because we discovered some things that require a little bit of thinking. We are still planning to have it in the release, but it won't be in the first beta. And yes, you should expect a demo soon about runtime SDK, lifecycle hooks, and all these new extensibility points. In the document, you can see there are links to the tracking issue where we are keeping track of all the implementation work. Another change, which is pretty common when we cut a minor, we have bumped all the dependencies as usual. We are still waiting for a controller runtime patch release. Because we discovered a bug. The fix is already been merged in controller runtime, but yeah, we have to wait for maintainer to cut a release. And we also need a fix for controller tools because we discovered basically a bug when they generate CRDs, and this bug is we really need this fix. And also we discovered some issue about how they manage server-side apply markers, that if we can get this merged, this could simplify the work in the provider for adopting server-side apply. Talking about server-side apply, why we implemented this? So we implemented server-side apply only in the topology controller, and the need for this is to support basically co-authored slice like subnet, where we got some info in the slice from the templates, and then the controller adds all the other info reconcile time. This is super important. We tested this as much as possible, but we need really feedback from the provider. We already have our migration guide in the main branch of the documentation. We try to make things as clear as possible for all the changes. Yeah, and we are looking for feedback also for this. Last point is that the release contains also some initial work for structural logging. It is also, this one is documented in the release note. I stop a second for question, comment, and okay, so it seems there are no questions. I see Winnie added something.
There are some hands. I don't know if you see that.
Oh, I don't see hands. Oh, where it is? There is. Here it is. Sedef.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. Since this is a huge release and this server-side apply fix is important. Is it possible to like backport this? I know there are lots of dependency bumps and it will be super difficult, but just wanted to understand if that's a possibility.
No, I don't think so. The change of server-side apply, in my opinion, does not qualify as a fix on an alpha feature. The PR is huge, and I would prevent to, yeah, in my opinion, that is not worth a backport.
Fair enough, thanks.
Joey.
Hey, so just a quick question with the documentation. This is awesome. It looks like is maybe Kappa has already gone through testing and gone through this process. Is that correct? Or I guess a better way to say this is, have there been any providers that have tested this, gone through this process, and were there any gotchas that popped up that may not be in this documentation yet? Does anybody know?
Yes, I can comment. So I actually started testing. So Kappa started testing the server-side apply, and if you open that link, the test for adopting Kappa server-side apply. So we basically encountered two issues. And one is the one Fabrizio mentioned about like controller tools having problem generating the markers. So which is tracked in the test under other issues to follow. And I know that Christian is like working on fixing this. So that's one issue. And we basically need to add the list type map and this map key with some unique key. And for Kappa, the problem is that in subnet spec, we don't have any required and unique field. So I actually have an issue. So basically you need a field that's actually required. And also it needs to be unique. And I think like for Azure, like CapG, they have a name field, but for Kappa, we don't have it. So we will probably need to add a field that, I don't know, like UUID or like whatever field. So that there's an issue right below add a required field to subnet spec. So if people have an opinion, yeah, feel free to jump onto this issue and comment.
Thank you, Winnie. Yassine?
Yeah, so yeah, I think this is like we're gonna definitely need some guidance here about for providers that have co-authored slices, but that have like only optional fields. So there's probably going to be some nuance there, because if you like we're gonna have to see if like we need to have the field that is present at all time, or if waiting for the field to be filled back by the controller is enough. Because I believe like when we're, at least in Kappa, when we're doing creation, the controller fills back a bunch of fields like IDs. But if we really need the field to be present on creation, then yeah, there's going to be probably something that we need to add, because we can't do break-in changes and change like fields to make them required.
Thank you, Yassine. So I go a little bit quickly back to Joe's question about the migration guide. So how do we write this migration guide? We write this migration guide while developing new PR, and usually the first provider to be moved, basically to implement these changes, is the CapD provider that we use for our CI/CD. But KBD provider is really a test provider, so it provides a good signal, but not the best signal that we can have. So TLDR, those documents are, let me say, the best that we can do at this stage. If when adopting the release, you find that documents are not clear enough or whatever, please feel free to open an issue or send a PR to improve the document so everyone else in the community can benefit from it. Is that okay for you, Joe?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. I had I tried to answer to Yassine and give a little bit more context. So what we do with server-side apply? With server-side apply, this is the documentation in the Kubernetes website. Server-side apply basically provide a more granular field management, and it leverages on this managed field information to basically keep track of each controller, manage each field in every data. And then it has its own policy to manage conflicts, stuff like that. What really is in the end of the controllers is to define the merge strategy. So basically, when a controller defines its own API, it has to choose, it has the opportunity to choose if a list has to be treated as an atomic list, which is the default. So basically, it does not allow two different authors to work, or if it has to treat it as a set or as a map. Okay, in case we use list type map, server-side apply basically requires that you have to define a list map key, at least one list map key, that basically allows, when you compare the list, it allows to identify the same item. And according to the specification, those values must be scalar, and as far as I've tested, they cannot be empty. But let me say, these are not, let me say, cluster API requirement. This is the behavior of server-side apply. You can test it by kubectl applying any YAML file. You see?
Yeah, I'm mostly worried, to be honest, on cases where we're not doing bring your own infrastructure, meaning that like in cases where Capstar are actually creating the network constructs and a bunch of these things that are usually a slice. In that case, I think in Kappa, Winnie, Sadaf, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the whole network spec is optional. So like if we can't know in advance how many elements that we need to put in into the slice and how many keys we need to auto generate, I think it can be a bit challenging there also.
To be honest, maybe we can take this offline, but I don't see this a problem. So the problem is only exists when the list is co-authored. When the list is managed by only one actor, being cluster API, which take values from the template, or being the Capstar controller, which fills value in any way, there are no conflict. There is no problem. The problem is when you have a list that in some cases you want to being able to have it managed by two authors. In that case, you need to basically pick one of the allowed merge strategies.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, like in that case, we wouldn't really need to care and generate if like the whole slice is not present.
Okay, but yeah, if you, let me say, we experimented a lot around this. If you need some help, feel free to reach out. And let's go back. If there are no other questions, let's go back to the agenda. And it seems that we are at the end of the agenda. So is there some last minute topic that we want to talk about? Goes once, twice, three. Have a nice day. See you.